All right, we just sent it and we are live. This is so weird that probably the most infamous interview that's going to happen here is happening from 300 miles
Thank you.
away.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I mean, we've been together so often that I never even thought of hitting the record button when you were around, but now is as good time as ever. So I don't know if there's an introduction is even necessary here. We're talking with Luis Rivera, four-time All-American, national champion, the weight throw in 2016 at Nazareth College, sixth all-time, 2045 in round 5 at D3 Indoor Nationals. Puerto Rican national record holder in the weight throw, 2202. Qualified.
2201.
Sorry, 2201. I was close. I missed it by a quarter of an inch. Let's see how many other accolades. Four-time USATF indoor weight throw qualifier, two-time participant. 5th place and 6th place, right? 17 and 18.
6 and 6. Both years, 6 and 6.
6 and 6. So this shows how bad of a coach I am.
I missed that prize money by one spot.
Because I don't even have the numbers memorized perfectly. Since I'm the one I think I've written most about you, I've asked you to write about yourself, and you're so humble that you've left that all to me. Why don't you share how, from the very beginning, so I don't mean like just showing up at NAS, like even the very beginning. So your path to, throwing success is probably a little different than 99% of everybody else's.
Right.
You came to the U.S. with your family in 9th grade, right? Mm-hmm. And why don't you take the story from there?
It's funny. I actually haven't told the story to a lot of people, and you're one of the few that actually knows the entire story. But even before we met, so I was born in Puerto Rico, and I was raised in an island of the population is like 10,000 people east of the east coast of Puerto Rico. Okay. It's called Vieques, and it's a really small island. Literally all you do there, I mean, when I was growing up, is we went to school and then we played outside. Everyone pretty much had their own horse. I mean, just as pure as you can think. Right. And that's all I knew. I played like little ball baseball there. Back home, obviously baseball is a big deal. And my brother was into track. He was a really good track athlete. He actually had a full ride to the University of Puerto Rico, UPR, for the 200 and 400. And I mean, at the time, I didn't really know much. My brother's 5 years older than me. And at the end of 2005, I believe, the decision was made that, my mom didn't want to live there anymore. And in order for us to successfully move out of the island, I had to move with my dad. And pretty much, so I have 4 siblings, 2 of them on my mom's side and 2 of them on my dad's side. I'm the youngest on my mom's side. So my brother got to pick what he was going to do, and he decided that he was going to stay there in Puerto Rico. My sister decided she was going to stay with her grandmother, and I didn't have a choice. My mom said, "You're going with your dad up to New York." And the goal was to eventually return together in Florida. That never happened. But I get to New York, and it's an absolute, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it, a total different lifestyle. I have family that lived in the States my entire life, so I could defend myself with the language, but there was still a language barrier. Mm-hmm. So I went to an inner city school called Martin Luther King Middle School, I believe it was called, in the inner city of Rochester, New York. And I mean, I have struggling, finding what my, where in that time in your life where, I think I was 12, about to turn 13, I believe. And it was just such a crucial time in your life. And I just didn't know. I didn't have the tools to successfully maneuver through finding myself and finding where I belonged. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, I have a father who is who pretty much his mentality is, there is no plan B, is plan A, and you got to go. If not, can I curse through here or no? Yeah.
What? Oh
You
yeah, sure. Go
fucking,
ahead. Yeah, man.
yeah. Okay. You fucking go through the wall.
Right.
And I had to learn that very quickly. Um, and it was, I had to develop that mentality where I didn't have the option to fail. I didn't have the option to kind of, get in like the fetal position and cry because I didn't know the language and people didn't want to speak to me. I had to say, fuck it, I'm going to find my own way. And I did. I was like, well, I like to play basketball, so I'm going to come in early into school because it was like early arrival. And say, I'm going to play basketball and hopefully I'll make friends like that. And I'm going to watch extra TV and I'm going to practice my English. And eventually I'm going to make friends. Kind of came up with this little plan and it worked out eventually. Some friends. And that time, I remember that time went by really, really quickly. There's some memories of this one time I started to figure out that I was taller and stronger than everyone around me. And I found that out because, and I never told you the story actually, but there was this kid I was maybe 1 or 2 grades below me. We brought us our bus before going home, and I grabbed this kid's head and I picked him up with his head like this, and he freaked out. The next thing I know, his mom is trying to find out where I lived at. My dad, like, your son picked up my son by his head, and I'm just like, oh shit, I probably shouldn't do that. So my dad was pissed about that, but I was like, oh shit, I guess I'm pretty strong. So at that point, I was like, okay, I really want to play football. I was like, I like the game, I understand the game, I have the strength, and I want to play football. So I arrived at James Monroe High School, another inner city school, and there they didn't have their own football team. They had a team. They have a joint team with Edison Tech on the other side of town. So I joined the football team, and I was there for. I played 3 years, and my third year I got hurt. But yeah, I played. I started in JV, and I was playing nose guard or linebacker, and I thought I was pretty good. Um, I wanted to play in college, and I was starting to kind of maneuver myself through finding out how I can play in college. And I didn't really have anyone to help me because being the first one in my family to go to college, I didn't know. To this day, I remember my dad being like, "Hey, figure it out, and when you do, come back home and tell me so I can help your siblings because I don't know what I'm doing either."
Right.
So that was another thing. That was a huge uh, challenge because you're talking about money now and loans and what do I want to go to school for, and in reality I didn't know. All I knew is that if I met someone based on my previous struggles in middle school, I knew that I could connect with them somehow. So through my struggles in middle school, I developed this enormous amount of skill when it came to emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I got, because I couldn't speak with people, I got really good at observing and noticing body language and knowing what people liked and what didn't like. So when I went and approached someone, I had an idea kind of who they were.
Mm-hmm.
And through trial and error, right, throughout years, I've been able to use that in my advantage. And even now, I mean, I can bullshit myself out of any situation pretty much, and it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, but that's business. And I was like, okay, I want to go into business. Business is about interactions and communicating with people.
Right.
And I was working at Wegmans, which is a small, not a small, is a huge family-owned, billion-dollar company out of Rochester, New York. And I did an internship there for a couple of years. And the internship was a 3-year internship. And at this point, I was already in college. So let me backtrack a little bit. In high school, played football. The last year I played, I ended up tearing my rotator cuff and breaking my collarbone. It was a very minor break in my collarbone, but my rotator cuff was totally torn. And again, my father being the way he is, I remember him looking at me and saying, "We don't have the money for you to do therapy, so you're going to have to figure it out." So here I'm again in a situation where I have to figure out on my own. And at the time, I mean, I don't know if people can imagine how upsetting it is, having the dream to want to play football and needing to recover from something and not having the support. But now I was in a familiar place where I had to figure out on my own, and I did. I looked up YouTube videos on how to, recover, and I was doing therapy with cans of beans and working out in my basement. And around that time, I remember getting a letter from Nazareth College saying you got into the HEOP and Excel program, which is um, it's a program for diversity and inclusion students from the inner city, but also have good grades. And I fell right in the borderline where I got a really good scholarship, but not like the best scholarship, just because my family household income was right in the border.
Mhm.
And it was just a decision that I made in the spot. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go to Brockport to play football. I'm not going to Fisher to play football or even Syracuse. And this is at home, and I'm getting some money. And they're letting me start in the summertime with some free credit. So let me go ahead and do that.
Sure.
So I did. And that was another experience where, I'd getting books, getting supplies. My family didn't have a fucking clue what they were doing. So here I'm again being a pioneer, and kind of breaking through those barriers. And I said, okay, well, I'm here now. Let me make the best of it, even though I didn't know what the best of it was going to be. So I got to Nazareth and I met some friends. One of my first friends that I met was someone who was going to be in the track team, Kyrie Gale.
So let me
And
stop you for a second.
yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of like,
Nice manicure, by the way.
dude, you like that? So yesterday during creative arts time with the
I
boys,
love it. That's awesome.
they're like,
The
Daddy,
life of a dad.
we're gonna do a different color for every finger. I was like, cool, man. Like, what are
I
you
like it.
gonna do with the 6 and a 4-year-old, right? So rumor. There's a lot of different stories about how like you actually ended up on the team. So
Mm-hmm.
at the same time that you're taking these summer classes,
Mm-hmm.
I emailed James Goss, who's the director of track, and I said, hey, I'm in town. I'm not coaching, but I'm interested in coaching throwers. So we meet a couple times, and he's like, yeah. So by the way, you're gonna have 2 freshman guys.
Mm-hmm.
One has never thrown before, and the other one has. And you're gonna have a senior female thrower who's a physical therapy major. And I was like, well, okay. So how'd you find the kid who's never thrown before?
Right.
So from the horse's mouth, how did you end up joining Nazareth's track and field team?
So there were 2 interactions with James Goss. The first one, Kyrie had a meeting with him, and I remember. I mean, we were all very young. I mean, we were 18, and we thought we knew everything. We're in college. We are the hottest shit around.
Right.
We're gonna run this place. And I was like, I want to be a part of it. Based on what I heard, I didn't know anything about track, but apparently Kyrie was really good, which he was. I mean, at the time, he was the shit when it came to triple jump. He's like, yeah, I'm going to meet with coach. I got recruited, and instantly the word recruiting was familiar to me because of football. And I was like, shit, well, I can't get recruited, but again, I want to be a part of something since, being in athletics. So he said, you can come with. So James Goss walks in, and I introduced myself, and he's talking to Kyrie, and he's like, oh, so who are you? What's your name? What do you do? And he was like, well, he was like, would you be interested in joining track? And the conversation didn't really go anywhere. It was kind of just like, oh, maybe, possibly. But he was mostly focused on Kyrie, which I understand. But for me at the time, I was like, oh, pretty, like, I'm in, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be, I had no idea what it was.
Right.
And then the summer went by, and I think we were off for another 2 weeks, and we came back. We came back to school. And this is before we had the team meeting. It was the first day, and I remember because I was very upset that day. Another thing that happened was I did not get to live on campus my first semester of college, so I had to commute. It was like longer than an hour because I had to take a bus from the other side of town to downtown, then downtown to Pittsford. And I was just upset. I graduated as a valedictorian of my class, and I'd never missed a day of school since my freshman year. I had perfect attendance, and again, my dad. I mean, I can write a book about my dad. usually not that I asked for anything, I thought that I would be given, the second car in the house that, wasn't driven.
Right.
And he pretty much was like, I don't think so. You're gonna have to figure it out. I was like, son of a bitch. So I was taking the bus to college. Here I am, just trying to figure out life. And I went down to the weight room because I got there super early and I was trying to figure out my classes and I was working out. And here comes James Goss. He walks into the weight room. He goes, "Hey, I believe we spoke to someone." I was like, "Yeah, we did." He's like, "So are you gonna do track?" And my answer immediately was like, "No, I can't. I'm living at home. I have 2 jobs, and if there's no way I can do track because of work."
Right.
And then me being the smart ass I am, I said, "But if you give me a job, I'll consider it." He said, "We can make that happen because if you do work study in the weight room,
Mhm.
I can get you paid for that and you can do homework."
Right.
I was like, "Okay, now we're talking." And here I am thinking I was going to be this, the next big thing without really knowing anything. So I was like, "I'm not going to run." He's like, "Oh, no, you wouldn't run." He's like, "You be a thrower." I was like, "What is that?" So he's like, "I'll show you." So I remember he walked me over to the equipment room, and the first thing he handed me was a shot put, and I grabbed it, and I was like, "I have to throw this?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man, I can throw this." It's like, "How far you need me to throw it? Name it." You know what I mean? And now after knowing Goss for 8 years, the look he gave me at the time, I thought he was thinking, "Oh, maybe you can," but really he was thinking, "There's no fucking way." I was like, "You better calm down." So I agreed. I said, "Okay, I'll join the team." And he said, "We're gonna have a meeting at the end of this week. You should come." And here I am coming. I walk into this meeting, and you're sitting there. Um, and yeah, that's. I'll let you kind of take it a little bit from there, but that's pretty much the story of how it happened. I didn't know what track and field was. I didn't know that I would. I honestly, for me, I was thinking about finally being free. I was thinking about partying, being with girls, finally being able to drink, and doing whatever I wanted. I was not thinking about I'm gonna be a 4-time All-American and a national champion. And even go further than that, I was not thinking I'm gonna get my master's, and while I'm doing that, I'm gonna train for the 2020 Olympics.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because so that was the first time I met you, Brandon, Jess, the whole team, and this would have been like the the end of October is when I don't know, maybe like the beginning of October, informational
Yeah.
meeting, get our schedules. Hi, my name's Charles, whatever. And I remember something that stuck out is that I had asked everybody to write down how many credits they were taking. And I think Brandon was like 18, Jess was like 20 or something, and then you wrote down 14. Said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "Well, I'm taking a science class and an English class and some other stuff, but I'm at 14 credit hours." Sure, that's fine. So
Mhm.
we get to our first week of practice, the beginning of November, and I think it might have been the first week, and it was customary, and I still do it today. How's your week going? How are
Mhm.
classes? How's your day? Like, so on. Just try and develop a rapport with new kids because I was new too, to everybody. And I remember you saying that you were having difficulty with a science class,
Human biology.
biology, and you were thinking about dropping the course.
Yep. Withdrawing. Withdrawing was
Right,
the
right.
technical
Sorry,
term.
withdrawing because we was still up until that point,
Yep.
and I remember telling you, I was like, well, the NCAA says you have to take at least 12 credit hours. So if
Mhm.
you withdraw from the course, you're going to go to 11. No, coach. My advisor said I could take a 1 credit course. It's fine.
Yep.
Now, mind you, like I've written about this, but I don't think we've actually ever talked about it where people
Nope.
can watch it or whatever. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, so if his advisor says that he's going to be able to register for a 1 credit course in the beginning of November, halfway through the semester, like, okay, like I didn't know any different, right? So that next week rolls around Monday, and we're practicing in the auxiliary gym at Nazareth College at was it 7 a.m. maybe? It might have been one of those early morning practices.
It was, yeah, I think it was one of those early morning ones.
And Lewis comes in and says, Coach, I dropped my science course because I was failing, or I was concerned I was going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And my advisor told me that I couldn't, there wasn't any other classes to enroll in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for coming this semester, Lewis. Your season is over before it even got started. And
I don't even think I practiced. I don't think I practiced.
I don't think so. Like, I know we had a couple weight room sessions. I think we did some like learn to turn, like try and throw a weight, you know, how to hold it and stuff like that. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, so this he never competed in track in high school. He competed in football, so he kind of has the attitude, right? Like he's gonna have that type of mentality. But without having a tie to it, like I've told people, I never thought I'd ever see you again.
Yeah,
like,
I had the same feeling too.
Right? Like, what's the hook of keeping you of you coming back if you had a couple meets, right, or a couple of practices? But I remember I sent you a program, and I think that you were the only one of the three that actually did everything, even though you weren't tied to the team. And you came back in January, right?
Yeah. I remember actually that I was so upset because at the time, again, I felt like an outsider, right? So, and this keeps going back to that. And it's at this point is a familiar place for me where I've been able to succeed, because Brandon, he was recruited, and he wore that on his sleeve. He's like, I was recruited. And to me, that was the coolest shit ever, to be recruited and also be able to stay there during the break and train, or come in early and train. And I think I remember emailing you, asking you, hey, am I going to, and you're like, no, you can't train. You can't, not until it starts. Right. And I was livid. I was so pissed. And I think that initially where that fire came from was like, I wanted to get back at someone. I wasn't mad at I was mad at my advisor because she did fuck me over. But I was mad that I couldn't belong again. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't even think I touch a weight or like actually thrown at that point. I think I had 2 practices before the Brockport meet, and I didn't even have throwing shoes. Right. But yeah, I came back, and I instantly remember, I could instantly, through my emotional intelligence, could tell that you were just like, man, this fucking kid. You were just like, what the fuck is he doing? And then I was like, this guy doesn't know. He doesn't know me. You know, it's a D3 private college. You know, you have kids in here who, parents went to school, and they're educated, and they had a different upbringing than myself. And all I could think, I was like, oh, he just doesn't know what he's getting himself into yet. And I instantly, without knowing if I was going to love track or not, I just felt like I had to prove a point. Mm-hmm. And that's really where it started. And I'll say that the spark kind of turned into a fire after that Brockport meet, because again, I didn't have throwing shoes. And I remember Brandon like throwing a pair at me and be like, here, wear these. And I was just like, well, I was like, this is it. And I didn't know what meters were. I didn't know what the school record was. And I think I broke the school record at that meet with 1 wine release.
Yep, wine release. I think the school record for men's weight and as at the time was more like 10 meters.
Yeah, I mean, I think I threw 11:14, was it?
Yep, 11:14, first meet with the wine and release at City Brockport.
It was the black and green Adidas, the shoes that I threw, and I will never forget. And yeah, from there on, I'm actually interested to see what because I don't think you were not at that meet. I don't think you were not at that meet. I don't think you were, because I remember Jess. I think we were texting you or something. I don't know if you were at work or school, or maybe I don't. Remind me if you were there or not.
No, I was. I remember.
Okay.
So freshman and sophomore. Yeah. No, I remember. I remember the meet, and it's funny because you mentioned that, because like reflecting back on it now, you can't even throw there anymore. Like
no
facility, like
Yeah.
We outgrew it, right?
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because your freshman year, and it was great that because I was talking to another coach about this today, about like rivalry on the team, and I think it was really good that it was just you and Brandon that season, that he had his chip on his shoulder, that he was going to play hockey too.
Right. Yeah. I forgot about that. So, Coach, I'm going to be the goalie for the hockey team.
That's right. We'll have to send this to him after.
Yeah.
After
we have to do an interview or a podcast with Brandon. That'll be interesting.
Right. But no, you threw 11-14. We managed to make it through the indoor season. You scored 6th place at E8. You made the finals at Ithaca College with a wine and release at like 10 and change meters, and this would have been indoor E8 2013. And I mean, and then outdoor, you scored at the state meet. Remember, through 40 meters and change when we were up in St. Lawrence and we got tan.
Yep, I remember that.
But from your first year, right? And I think a lot of people might take it for granted, like everything that you share on social media. And somebody once joked to me, well, Lewis was a great thrower when he came to NAS. Like, I don't think people realize.
You said someone told you that?
Yeah, like I don't think if they knew the background or whatever, I'm like, yeah, no, he never threw a NAS. Like, it was probably better off that you didn't, because you didn't have any bad habits or anything. And those I taught you, but like how, like reflecting back on it now, right? Like what does it mean to you now? Like your first meet, you threw 11 meters. You had meets where you threw 9 meters. Like how, like talk a little bit about that. Like I think people sometimes get the misconception that you were born. I mean, maybe you were born a 20-meter thrower. It just took a while, to get it out of you.
Yeah.
Like talk about that. Like you were in the United States for 4 years. You go to college. Your season is over before it even starts your full semester, right? And then you come back and like, can you go into like a little bit more detail about that? Like, I know you said you wanted to like prove a point to me because I made a joke about. Well, we'll get to that story later, but like, but how do you do it? Like, because I'm still fascinated by it too, and I lived it, and I've been living it for 8 years. But like, from your perspective, like, how, no shoes, no glove, right? Like,
I don't spend time thinking about it. I don't know. I think it's just my upbringing, and it's just the way that I've been forced to kind of just do things. I'm like, look at me now. I'm in the middle of nowhere in Ashland, Ohio. My family is in New York. I haven't been home in 4 months, and prior to that, I wasn't home for almost a year.
Right.
And it doesn't bother me. I'll tell you. There's a story that I really admire, and I really hope people don't take this the wrong way. And I saw this early on in my college career. I was watching the movie Pumping Iron with Arnold in it, right?
Do we watch that? Was that the one I brought on the bus?
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure I had watched it before that. But yeah. And there's a part where Arnold's dad dies. He passes away.
Right.
And his mom says, "Are you going to come to the funeral?" And he says, "Why? He passed. I have to get ready for a competition."
Right.
And it's not exactly that example. It's just the mentality that whatever he had planned and whatever he had set to do, which was his bodybuilding competition, nothing was going to stop him to get there. And I think that not only so far in track, but even before that in my life, like I just had to kind of have that mentality with things because I didn't have a safety net to fall on. My family didn't have a safety net to fall on, and I inherited that really quickly just by observing and adapting things from people around me. I've always been a really good listener, but again, I don't know if that answers the question well, because it's so it's such a hard question of how I do it. I don't know. It's almost like it's part of my DNA. It's not something that I try to do. I just, if I see something, like I'm just gonna go and do it. Um, and to go back to that initial story, I think that as soon as that meet was over, I think that we had a conversation, and I'm pretty sure I gave you some goals as to like I want to do this next, and I was asking questions so I didn't know. It's like, okay, so what is it to qualify the states, or what's this? And after that, I was hooked. It was like a drug. I was like, this is what I want to do. And that's how it has been with everything. I mean, I didn't have plans on getting my master's, and you were actually the person that inspired me. You inspired me to do lots of things. A lot of people don't know that. And as soon as you brought it up and I thought about it, I was like, okay. And I mean, there was no questions about that either. I mean, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I flew through that motherfucker. You know what I mean? I didn't struggle to get my master's at all. I graduated with a 3.56.
Right.
And it's just how it is. And to fast forward a little bit, now I'm in a place where I'm nothing because everyone around me has that mentality. You know what I mean? Where I'm at right now, this is the place where that's how people are bred.
Right.
So it's only right to be here, whether if it's temporarily or permanently. But yeah, I think that at whatever level, where if it's at life or not, I think the way to succeed and the way that I was able to accomplish those things is just to have the mentality that you just have to do it. Again, there's no other way that I can break it. You just have to do it.
And I think that's what it comes down to, because you really did. Because I remember I sent you some YouTube videos in between that intercession between the fall and spring semester. And I remember you sharing, came back that you watched YouTube videos and you watched Olympics, and you said, you wanted to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always, and I think you can tell, and like any coach that's worth their salt, like they'll share that, like if you look at an athlete, like you can tell like that, okay, this one might be special, this one I might need to work a little bit harder. You always had that little like spark, like a little sparkle where even if it wasn't going as well, or we didn't know how to take a 2-turn throw, or all of a sudden, well, coach, I want to try 3 turns in the hammer. Well, let's settle, like let's try and figure out how to wind this thing first. Like it wasn't that bad of a introduction to track. I mean, you scored at a couple meets, like you threw 40 meters, which have you never thrown. Like, I think we were kind of learning at the same time too, because I'd been out of coaching for a long time, so it was like kind of starting over from scratch. So being able to apply different, things that went horribly wrong at Fredonia, I knew I was never going to do that stuff again. Well, you learn too. Like I was, 22 years old, coaching my teammates. Right? It's like, one weekend you're at Sonny's having a good time. For those of you who are going to watch this, Sonny's and Coughlin's and all that stuff.
Right.
And then the next year, it's like, okay, by the way, I need you to do this workout.
Yeah.
You're going to come to practice in this time, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. And it's like, them a little differently. It's like, wait a second, like you have to be able to draw the line. But, since you kind of mentioned that like, grad school thing, right? So not to fast forward like your whole career, but just kind of get to it because you brought it up. So you graduated with honors from NAS, you're a national champion, finished 3rd in the hammer your senior year. You graduated.
Second. Oh no, 3rd. You're right.
Sorry.
It should have been 2nd. It should have been 1st, but yes, 3rd.
Could have been 1st. I know, right? And you applied in grad school, and you were enrolled, and I think it, that's like the next story there. But you ended up throwing your personal best the year after you graduated in the weight throw. But you were going to grad school full time. You were our graduate assistant. You were you had an internship, and you trained when you could. Like, and I think a lot of people that don't, like, they might take it for granted, right? Like you threw 22 meters with, it should have been like your 6th or 7th priority.
Mhm.
and somehow you were able to, you put this together. You get off a plane in Albuquerque, right? And
Mhm.
the stars align and what have you. How how do you balance that? Like I have 3 kids, like, and I've been working from home for 2 weeks, and like it's impossible for me to get a workout in the garage without like tripping over a bicycle or whatever. And you were doing all this stuff.
Mhm.
Like how do you I think we say like whatever it takes, or
Mhm.
it's all or nothing, but like what else
There
is a
there's
drive?
a you see, there's a difference from saying that and from actually living it and doing it.
Right.
Um, and I'm no David Goggins, but I've kind of been able to experience things like that where I'm just on a mode where, or at that time. Now it's a little easier because I've gotten older, and I have a full-time job and I have a good system here,
Mhm.
which I would love to talk about later on. But uh, at that time, I fresh out of school, and my mentality was like, I want to be a professional. I mean, I had my best friend Sean Donnelly was, he was coming out of D3 and getting all these sponsorships and throwing well, and his situation was different
Right.
than mine because he is better than me. But that did not mean that I was going to have any excuses to to do it all. And another thing that I thought about during that time is that I did it because I knew that there were people that couldn't.
Right.
Because I know people that did not have the ability or the resources to go to grad school, or people that had the ability to, have the internship that I had. And in a way, it was me. I was just manifesting through gratitude. At the same time, I was just being thankful. So I'm like, hey, I have all these things. I'm going to take advantage of all of them while I can.
Right.
Um, and I didn't think twice. I mean, there was times because part of that, I don't know if you remember, I was living. So the first part of the year I was in Rochester, and then after that I moved to Buffalo. And there were times where I
Right.
would drive in the morning and work at our Rochester location for my employer at the time. I would go throw, lift, go to class, get out of class at 9:30, 10, drive back to Buffalo, and then have to work again in the morning, and then either train at Buffalo or train in Rochester, or get my papers done and my research, whatever I had to do. And I was just going at the time. I was just nonstop. I remember traveling a lot. I was also driving to Ashland, I
Excellent. That's
think,
right.
every
That's
other
right.
month.
Yep.
And it was just like that, you know, that grind where I'm just like, if I want to get my name out there, if I want to be considered as an elite thrower for the next, 4 or 5 years, whether if it's in the B or C class of elite throwers, I don't care, but I'm going to do it.
Right.
Um, and I think that right now I consider myself like a C class elite athlete, depending.
Right.
I don't think that there are too many people that can pick up the weight any day and say I'm going to throw 70 feet, and I can confidently say that I can do that.
Right.
Um, and Yeah, it's just there's a difference from saying whatever it takes and you know and actually doing it. And
Right.
I think that I've never had the option to have a plan B, and my plan A is plan B and C every time. That's plan A.
Right.
And I go with it.
Right.
But with that also comes having people like you, right? Having those light givers and having people that are going to support you, and people that are going to be there to listen to you and kind of give you some guidance when the tunnel gets a little dark. It's not easy. I mean, I cannot take all the credit for myself. You definitely got to be in a position where you have people that can guide you in certain occasions. I've mentors now who I barely, that I don't talk to every day. For example, Coach Logan, he can maybe tell me 5 words, and with those 5 words, I can ride with that for a month,
Right.
and I can get $1,000 out of that.
Right.
Um, and it's just you got to be able to build those relationships with yourself and those people around you that when you really want to do something, those are the people that are going to hold you accountable for you not to, cop out for plan B, and plan A is it.
Right. And I remember I tried pushing you to Ashland a little sooner than you went, where
Right.
I mean, I think every coach, in the back of their mind, every once in a while might think, well, you know what, like I've taken this athlete as far as maybe they can go. Like, I mean, 22 meters, like that's rarefied air, right? Not a lot of people do that every year.
Right.
But once you went to Ashland, you hung out with some of the Ashland throwers and things like that. You develop a rapport. They let you into the family, right?
Right.
How talk about like the decision then to, you know what, I'm gonna go. Like I'm gonna give it a shot, because you hear people like every and it's unfortunate. We'll be able to get to it maybe tonight or another episode, but like people live in their cars for a year for a chance to make the Olympic trials, or people eat tuna fish out of a can for 6 months in water because that's all they can afford, so they could pay a coach or do whatever. Like you were in a unique situation where you were kind of like on the cusp, like you said. Like you weren't necessarily like a like AG who won D2 nationals and was kind of a little bit more established than where you were when you graduated.
Right.
And like his story is he left everything and drove to Ashland, right? Girlfriend, whatever he could fit in his little car. And you kind of did that too a little bit. And
I did.
right? Like, I mean, you did, I mean,
Yeah.
won't get into all the details about what you left behind, but like you did it. And most people, I think, when given the opportunity, they come up with a whole bunch of excuses. And I remember, and I shared this with you, and I've talked about it, like this opportunity, like it's a once in a lifetime. Like it's easy for me to say now because I'm 38, right? And I can wake up and be like, okay, this is the life I have. But I never threw as far as you, and I was never as good. So for me to be realistic about that, it's like, I was never going to make the 08 Olympic trials or the 12 Olympic trials. I tried, like I wanted to, like I acted like I could.
Right.
You're actually like there. So when you finish with grad school and you have your your MBA in human resource management, talk about how the pieces came together to make the transition to go to Ashland.
There's parts of that story that I will not speak of, but
you don't have to tell the whole. You can just tell whatever
Right. I've always excuse my dog as she's but I've always knew I always knew that I loved this place I remember we came here, I believe in 2015 for a meet.
We did. Yes, we did.
And you, I mean, just the way you described Coach Logan and everything in regards to this place, I was just excited. I mean, all the videos that I watched and videos at this infamous farm and AG and Kibwe, and I was just excited to meet my first Olympian. And I believe the words were to you, "Hey coach, how you doing?" And you're like, "Hey, these are my athletes." And they were like, "Hi." And then he left. And instantly I knew, I was just like, this is this is it. This is, the real deal. So we started having these conversations and I remember the conversations were about, you're like, man, I wish I did it, and I could see in a way kind of your regret,
right?
And me thinking of myself, and I was just like, you know what? I don't ever want to live my life with any regrets or ever feel like I didn't accomplish the things that I loved. And at that point, 2016, we were so invested in our relationship and with the sport as well. And I was just like, I really think I have a chance. We had gone to Albany and talked to that coach there he's affiliated with the Olympic Committee in Puerto Rico, and he was saying how they didn't have a hammer thrower at the time. And I think that the record, now they have a guy who's fairly good, who's probably going to be my number one contender, but the record at the time was either 64 or 65 meters in the hammer. And we threw 15 out at nationals, and I remember the conversation we had, and it was just like, what are we going to do? And I
Right.
was just like, made a decision. I'm going to grad school. We're going to keep training.
Right.
Towards the end of grad school, I remember I was coming to Ashland fairly often because I was just in love, the training. And every time I came back to New York, I was 10% better.
Right.
And we started having these conversations about, well, what if rather than just making these visits, you should just commit?
Right.
Again, I'm being put in a situation where I have to make a decision, knowing that this, regardless of what happens, this is going to fall on me. I'm going to be on my own, which I've been my entire life. It feels like. And it was a place that I was comfortable with. Now, the hardest part, and I've never said this, it wasn't hard to figure out a job. The idea of being alone, the idea of not having any friends, the idea of being from the number one thrower in New York to being not the best thrower in this place, right?
Right.
That wasn't the hard part. The hard part was having the conversation with the four-time Olympian who talks at you, not with you.
Right.
And this man knows what you're going to tell him before you open your mouth.
Right.
Lucky for me, the part that I won't go on, lucky for me, there were talks before that. Before I even brought it up, there were talks of ideas that he had brought up for someone else who was training post-collegiately. And I was blessed to be considered as a training partner for that person. But I wasn't really made aware of it. So April of 2018 came along, and I was here for the Ashland and the Ohio State meet. I think I stayed here for 2 weeks, and I remembered, and I to this day I feel like Coach Logan knew that I was going to ask him because he had me take extra throws and everyone else was done. And after I took my last throw, I said, "Coach, can I ask you something?" And man, I was fucking terrified. And he was like, "Sure, I'll walk out to the field to get your hammer with you." And he never does that. I've never seen Coach Logan go out and get either or he has gotten his hammers, but I never really seen him go in the sector. So in my head, I'm like, "Here it is, fuck it." I was like, "Coach, I was thinking if I move nearby, can you please guide me or coach me?" He looks at me and goes, "Well, no, if you're gonna move here, I want to see you full time."
Right.
So I said, "Okay." He goes, "All right, done." Shakes my hand and leaves in his truck. And that was it.
Right.
I think 10 minutes after that, I texted you and I said, "It's done." I was like, and I don't know what else I said, but I was pretty much like, "That's it. I'm moving."
Right.
An hour after that, I broke up with my girlfriend at the time through the phone, not even in face.
Cool.
Um,
Classy.
huh?
Classy. Nice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It wasn't in a bad way. I was just like, "Hey, like I'm moving to Ohio. You live in Canada. I'm sorry." I went back to Buffalo. I had one summer class that I had to finish over the summer, which I actually finished here in Ohio.
Yep.
And I think I had a month left, and I told my roommate at the time, I was like, "Hey, I'm moving." Finalized my lease. I packed a truck, found a place to stay here, and I moved. And 2 days later, I walked into the field house, and Coach Logan looks at me and goes, "Are you ready to rebuild?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, be at practice at this time," and it hasn't stopped since.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's it.
It's so interesting because I remember that, because I didn't know any better either when I first started coaching, and I sent Jud, Coach Logan, an email in December of 2004, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if we come out and watch practice one day?" We drive out from Fredonia, myself and a bunch of kids, and it's interesting, and I think people sometimes take for granted like those initial conversations, those initial encounters, because he could have said no. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had talked to him once before ever at a
Mm-hmm.
meet my senior year where I thought it was like the greatest thing ever in the
Mm-hmm.
whole wide world. And then to say, "Oh, sure, sure, you guys come down or whatever." And then we showed up. Like it was Martin Luther King Day in January of
Mm-hmm.
2005. I wasn't teaching, like I had the day off from school. So we loaded up in our my Cutlass Supreme Oldsmobile with two athletes, which was probably the most illegal thing ever that you should do.
Right.
Drove a couple of hours to Ashland, and Derek and Joe Witzke are training. Crystal
Mm-hmm.
Smith is there. Kibwe, AG, and they were coming off the '04 Olympics and stuff. And I'm like, like it doesn't get any better than this, right? Like you can't
Right. Yeah.
just like show up and go hang out with like Tom Brady or Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes and stuff like that. Like there I don't know how many world championships and like Olympic games.
Mm-hmm.
I said, do you mind if we set up a video camera? Go ahead. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean that practice has never surfaced.
Right.
But like, it's just so fascinating how you make a good impression, and I guess that that might be a good message for those that are watching. Like you never know, like that
It's
handshake, that initial encounter, like how it could. And I think that was helpful, right? Like I don't think I was one of those like hanger-oners with like that Ashland crew. Like we kept in contact every once in a while. But it wasn't like, what are some drills or what? Like I
yeah.
wasn't really interested in that stuff.
Right.
And I think that it made that initial conversation in 2015 when we went to Spire. You remember when we went to the clinic in Spire?
Yeah.
And you and Jordan hit it off, and it was kind of like, okay, hey, Jud, this is athletes, just, introductions and whatnot. But it's really interesting how something that you take for granted at the time then turns into this, right? Like you're at Ashland. Not a lot of people make the decision to go, or if they have the opportunity, we don't know their circumstances and what have you. But no, I think you've made definitely the most of it. Unfortunately, but I never in my lifetime did I think we were going to see something like this Corona stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
That's I was wondering if you were gonna bring that up because aside from all those great things that you were saying, since I moved here, I've been nothing but blessed with the opportunity to train here every day. I mean, it's just I'm very fortunate. I don't think I deserve it. It's something that I have to earn every day to be around this group and to be around Coach Logan.
right.
And I was even given the opportunity to step in as a coach while he got sick, and that is something that almost triumphed me being a national champion to say I helped out, and again it was simply a help because I'm not even 1/8 of the coach or man he is, but to be even considered to get that personal call from him and say, hey, I need this from you, and that is something that I will have with me for the rest of my life. From all those great things until now, like today, where the university is not available to me. I've been working out at home with 35-pound dumbbells and bands and a 25-pound Rogue weighted ball that you actually bought for me.
We got to go back there after the
Yep,
stuff clears
absolutely. And yeah, but before I go into the more negative stuff, another crazy story is, I mean, you introduced me about, the topic of the farm, which is where the athletes threw at before the track was built.
Right.
And, we talked about it here and there. And when I first moved in to Ashland, I remember asking Coach Logan, I was like, hey, Coach, do you think you can ever take me to the farm? He was like, no, that place is not there anymore. Things, the way things ended, that place is not there. But no, I apologize. Initially, he said, yes, I will take you someday. And I think this is over a year ago, and we left it at that.
Right.
No, this Corona stuff started going on, and he texted me, and at the time I was in South Carolina. He said, hey, everything's shut down. When you come back, you cannot use the facilities. He said, I will think of places that you can throw at. So I instantly text him back and say, how about the farm? He goes, no, not available. It's not there anymore. So I come back, and, I've already made some connection outside of the track community here. I have mentors that live in Ashland that are part of the community. There's a couple doctors and people that are directors at the university that I've been able to connect with. And within one day, I'm meeting with someone and trying to figure out a plan. I was going to throw at their house at first, out of like these big enough, and they say, let me make a call because I have a friend who has a farm, and I believe they have a space that you can throw out of. So I said, oh, that's very random and rare, but okay.
Sure.
And they said the name of the owner of the farm. Now, my brain knew that name sounded familiar. The name was Britt Troth.
Right.
And the Troth family, I mean, I just know I heard it somewhere. So 20 minutes later, we're driving to this place, and it's in this disclosed location. I mean, the person said, you do not tell anyone where this is.
Right. It's a secret.
For anyone here, this is for you. This is your place. And, you know, and that was it. So I get to this location, and sure enough, I see wooden telephone poles and a fence, and just weeds. And my heart dropped. I mean, I got so emotional because, one, I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the effect of this. I mean, we are in the Olympic year. The Olympics are postponed, but just think about you having to find a whole different training camp for your training. And me being in a situation where I'm technically alone here, I kind of got to fight for myself, and to see the space, and not only just the space, but the farm.
Right.
And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, it doesn't get better than this again. So I took a snapshot, and I only sent it to Coach Logan because I didn't want anyone else to know. And he texts me back and goes, "Is that the farm?" He goes, "You better get the fuck out of there, or that guy will actually fucking shoot you." And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "It's all handled. It's fine."
Right.
He's like, "Okay." He's like, "Did you meet the owner yet?" I'm like, "I haven't seen him yet." He's like, "Make sure you know." He was concerned because, I mean,
Right.
this literally no one knows what this place is.
Right.
Everyone that knew where that isn't here. AG, they're not here anymore. No one's been up there.
Right.
So I meet the owner, and he pretty much says, "Listen, it's like, you can use the space. Text me before you come up here." He literally said, if you drive on a different car, you need to tell me which car you're driving. He said, "But this shit's for you."
Right.
And that's it. So again, blessed and super fortunate to have this space to train at. But even with having a place to train like that is so meaningful to the track community, because I had even Colin Dunbar, because I texted some of my friends. Even Colin Dunbar was like, "Man, I've heard of that place." He was like, "AG told me a story back in like 2008 or 2012, how sometimes they had to mow the grass because they couldn't find their hammers after throwing it."
Yeah.
So even people know of this place, you know. But even after having this place to train, the effect that this whole virus is having is so impactful that even today, I mean, I was just like, I don't even want to train. It's like, we don't know when the Olympics are going to be. It's like, you know, everything is shut down. I mean, things are very weird.
It is weird.
And to go back to the beginning, I automatically go back to my safe place, which is not training isn't an option. Failing is not an option. You moved all the way here for this one reason, so you have to do it. I could easily just be like, "Hey, you know, I'm gonna move, or, you know, I'm done throwing. I'm just gonna go get a job and make money."
Right.
But I mean, I've come so far. I've come this far already.
Right.
And I can only imagine how much harder it is for those that don't have the facilities or the opportunity to keep training. So
Right.
very
Yeah.
unfortunate.
I mean, that place is sacred. Like, I think I took my first throw there in like 2006 or 2007 with a camp that AG had, and then Adrian blew it at the time. Now Wilson, she had some camps there that we would drive on a regular. I mean, from Fredonia, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was only a couple hours, so
Right.
drive out Friday night, spend the night, throw Saturday, throw Sunday, and then go home.
Right.
And then I would burn my I'd burn my personal days from school for that travel stuff. Like, that's what I saved them for. Like,
Right.
it's so interesting when you're so invested in something, like how much you're willing, like how many other things you're willing to give up to pursue, pursue a dream. But before I have you here too long, there were some questions. You mind if I ask them from somebody here?
Shoot.
Instagram. So Jose Hernandez asked a couple questions. You answered the first one. How did you get started on your journey? Which you kind of talked a little bit, and that still like amazes me. Like, I think a lot of people, like, you might read things about like school. Well, man, we don't even have to go into that. So his next question is, your I don't want to get off tangent. Favorite and worst hammer.
Favorite and worst hammer.
So like weights. What?
Oh, like in weights?
Yeah,
Oh,
like favorite and worst. I mean,
uh,
last fall, you were taking what? 3 turn throws with a 35 on a full wire.
I was taking 6 turn throws with a 35 on a full wire
Mhm.
the summer I got here. Um, at the time, like while it was happening, that was my least. It is now actually one of my favorites because I couldn't see, but Coach Logan could see how it would help me, and it fixed a lot of things all at once. I'll say my favorite hammer at the time right now is the 18 pounder because that's what I'm currently throwing. The least favorite, um, the 12 pounder. That's where I started with this season to kind of develop some speed. And I mean, I should be able to throw that thing over 90 meters, and I could never get it over. I mean, I got it close to 80, but I never got it really over that. It's just so frustrating because it's a lot faster than you think.
Right. Let's see. So you talked about how you've adapted your programming for the Olympic change. Um, so what kind of programming do you incorporate? So the question is, what kind of programming does he incorporate, classic or Dr. B? So I remember one time
Hmm.
we had,
You know what I'm
the
thinking about,
question
right?
is not, no, I know. And the question is, Jose, the question, we're not laughing at the question. It's more
No,
of
we're not.
a story that we'll, we'll share for another episode of
Yeah.
a track meet that we were at, and we got a similar question, but it was a different response
Right.
than Lewis is going to give you now. But
Um,
if you're gonna explain to somebody how, how you go about your training, like what kind, what's it look
he
like?
said classic or Dr. Bonderschuck.
Yeah, classic or Dunner Myers truck. Yep.
I'll say neither. Um, uh, I'll say neither. I'll say it's a combination of lots of things. A lot of it is derived from what Coach Logan has established here because it works.
Mm-hmm.
And something is just how my body automatically throws. Something that I recommend for a lot of younger throwers is that if you are between the age of 19 and 20, 22, 23, you're probably not going to grow anymore. Um, you're not going to throw. I see this happen, and I know it because I used to do it myself. You're not going to throw like 100% not going to throw like Kibwe.
Right.
You're not going to throw like AG was a special, you might be similar. You're not going to throw like Shandali because not everyone has the same body type.
Right.
So I kind of have to take these different things and different techniques and see how these things work for me. I have a long wingspan because my back is as wide as a fucking silverback.
Right.
I guess my arms are long, but they're not as long as people think they may be. I guess I have an average height of 6 feet. But I have to take all those things into account. And when you get to this level, you kind of have to look at the mechanics of how you can let the ball do what it has to do. And we can get into more another time. But it's a combination of different things and kind of just being realistic about what you're capable of doing. If you're a shorter person, then maybe you focus on speed. If you are a longer person, maybe you focus on being longer. Me, I guess there's different part of me that apply to that. So me, I'm not a super fast thrower, but once I get going, I get really fast. I kind of just focus about being as long as possible within my first 2 turns, and then the last 2 turns, I kind of just let the ball do what it has to do. And Coach Logan always says, react, and it's kind of just reacting to whatever the ball is doing. So it's just, you can call it the Lewis style, which no one should try to imitate. So everyone kind of has their own thing.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because everyone's going to figure out their own style and everyone's going to do this. Like I remember many years ago, and it's still on YouTube. There was a deadlift competition there at Ashland where I think Derek Woodsky, he may have pulled like 700 pounds. And he's a former Canadian record holder. So, not everyone's going to pull 700 pounds if you're not a power lifter.
Right.
And
Right.
two turn throw the weight 80 feet like I watched him do a couple times. They can't. And then there's a lot of people that aren't going to hang clean 405 for a double like AG did either.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to, so Lewis is right. Like, I agree. You got to figure out what's going to be best for you. And even amongst like teammates, like you and Brandon did not throw the same at all.
Yep.
Or Tyler for that matter, or let's see, Nadeem and gosh, just everyone's different. So even as a coach, you try and have a model, or you try and have a technical model, but on meet day, it's more about who's going to throw farther. Like, obviously the technical model is important, but that's not something that's, I don't think we really, like, I didn't do a lot of coaching at meets. I'm guilty of, well, like I was talking to a coach today, and they said, you didn't really do much, just kind of sat in your chair and you got up every once in a while. And it's like, well, by the time you get to that point, like there's not that much that I could whisper in your ear at a meet that's going to change anything, right? Besides calming you down, or like, keeping to the plan of what we talked about the week leading up to it. But as far as like, technical styles, it's going to be different. You just got to figure out what's going to work for you in the long run.
Absolutely.
You transition from a heel turner to a toe in one at your first meet your senior year. And we didn't even get into that stuff, though. We have so much that we could talk
about. I know. We're going to have to do another one for sure.
We'll have to do a bunch of other ones. I mean, like, you went from we did a toe in one at RIT your first meet, and you threw just a hair under 60 feet. And that takes a lot to change in a semester, right? But so the last question is he aiming for the Puerto Rican national record this year?
This year, probably not, because there are no meets.
Right.
But yeah, I actually think the record now is over 70 meters. They have a guy whose name is Jerome Vargas or Vegas.
Yep.
Who is throwing over constantly, well, not constantly, who has thrown over 70. But yeah, I'll say next year for sure, 100%.
Right, and that's something that we can get into next time, because I got a list here of all the stuff that we can still talk about, and really, because when the IOC made the decision to postpone the Olympics, like the first thing I was like, oh man, like what's Lewis gonna do? And even my wife was like, hey, what's the next steps? Like, what are the plans? And you sent me a text message, and I'm not gonna say what the details, but it's like, okay, now we have 18 more months really to train from that, where it is almost like starting over. You're not, this isn't it's not August, you're doing fall training, you're not going to start throwing 35s now, but you never know where a meet might pop up in like July or August, where the opportunities to start start training again. But I feel bad. Like, I talked to a coach today, and I said, if we would have been at the award ceremony in Grinnell, Iowa in 2016,
oh man, I would have lost it. I would have torn that place down.
I don't know what would have happened, because it's just so fascinating to me as a coach and somebody who works at a university, that how things turned so fast. And even here in Rochester, like it's getting worse by the day. Like every day in Monroe County, there's more just stuff that you're hearing, and the schools are going to be closed, they said, officially until April 15th for sure, that we know of. College graduations are being canceled. Like, I'm 38, and I never thought I'd experience anything like this.
Yeah.
How are things out there? I mean, because you didn't even talk about like what you do, but I mean, you're in it, like, to your elbows every day.
Yeah. So I'm an account manager for environmental services and state compliance, pretty much in healthcare operations.
Right.
So anything that has to do with nursing homes or hospitals and their environment, that's pretty much what I manage.
Right.
So you're right. I'm in the thick of it every day, dealing with the CDC and anything that has to do with cleanliness, compliance, and making sure that things are sanitized and cleaned. Based on what we know professionally, everything's going to peak at the end of next month to beginning of May. What that means is peaking with numbers of cases, meaning we haven't actually seen how bad it's going to get yet. And people don't realize that. I'm not a medical professional, but based on what we are learning is that the virus does not do well in heat. So the sooner we get to summer, the better things will get. The virus has actually been around for more than 3 years. It is just now it has changed to where it can be transmitted from animals to human. That's how it started. And it can live on a surface for up to 4 hours. And after someone has it for 4 days, it is not transmittable. It's what we learned so far. There's cases where people are not even getting a fever and they're carrying the virus. There's also cases where, people could be totally fine one day, the next day they have shortness of breath, a direct cough, and 103 and above degree temperature. And it is spreading like wildfire. Here in Ohio, 2 weeks ago, I think we had less than, or in our county, we had less than, or I think we didn't have a case, and I think now we're up to almost 20 cases. And in Ohio as a whole, we have more than 4,000 cases. So it is spreading, and it is a big deal. If you're a younger person, obviously it will not affect you as much. I think that what they are worried about is how rapidly it is spreading and how it is affecting Medicare and places that do healthcare, considering that people that go to the hospital cannot stay in the hospital forever. So eventually they end up in a nursing home, and there just aren't enough hospitals and enough nursing homes to take care of these many people. So yeah, it's as much as it is affecting the economy, it's affecting the athletic community as well, and it's affecting everything else. Here, personally, in the town of Ashland, we have a shutdown where essential employees can go to work and do stuff. To be honest with you, people are out and about doing their thing every day. I mean, the other day it was pretty warm out. There were kids riding their bikes and out at the park and going on walks. So from a personal level, I don't see how they're practicing the social distancing, which is, that's their business. But not much has changed. I mean, other than barbershops being closed and small businesses ran by the state, but Walmart's open, GNC's open. Most of the restaurants are closed.
Get that pre-workout.
Yeah, actually, I went and stocked up on some protein today. I called while I was at work, and I'm like, "Hey, are you guys open?" They're like, "Yeah, we're open." So I had to go buy some stuff. But yeah, it's a big deal, and I don't know if we'll ever see anything like this in our lifetime. Again, I hope we don't. But this is something that will have a dent in our story, like in our own lives, I think for sure. And we haven't seen the economical effects of it yet. I think we will once it's over. But it's affecting a lot of people.
Right. Yeah, I know we're fortunate. I mean, working for a college and a school, we just gotta find random times throughout the day to get work done. Trying to watch three little
Or not.
or yeah, some days are better than others, but as long
Yeah,
it's got to get done eventually. But
absolutely.
So before I let you go, for those that are new to throwing or want to try throwing, what's one little nugget, one piece of information that you have for them to just for the new thrower, what do you say to them as far as perseverance, grit, like keep it going? What are your thoughts?
As a new thrower, you're obviously going to have more bad days than good days. To scale, it'll vary for everyone.
Right.
But even myself, I have a lot of bad days. I mean, but even like you said, my PR my freshman year was 40 meters. I can throw a 35-pound full length hammer more than 40 meters. But if I throw it 40 meters and it's 35 pounds, I'm upset. So in perspective, everything matters. I have a saying where I like to say that people's perspective is their reality, right?
Right.
So if you are recently getting into the sport or just learning and you're having bad days, and you are just getting upset with yourself, is a quick lesson I learned soon after I arrived here. I was training with Coach Logan, and I was having a bad day. And I think this day in particular, I thought that not that I was hot shit, but I'm like, I'm here, I'm doing the real thing. And I was having a bad day. and I had a bad throw, and coach was just like, what's happening? I was like, I'm just having a bad day. Like, no throw's gonna be good today. And I saw the light of God. I mean, he got so pissed at me. He was like, there wasn't a fucking day that I practiced and I did not gain anything from it. So you gain something from every practice, even if it doesn't go well. And I hold that to my heart every day. And with that, he also says, you're not as good as your good days and you're not as bad as your bad days.
Right.
So to any new throwers, just have an open mind, forgive yourself, have patience with yourself, and just at first, just think about having fun. Just think about, you know, figuring out how to move and how your body moves with the implement. I mean,
Right.
it is a pretty fucking cool thing if
Right.
you think about the story of where the sport came from.
Right.
Not a lot of people do it. You don't get paid money for it.
Right.
But obviously with help like our club and shit, you can if you get the right coach. I think now we're up to what, 5 D1 athletes.
Yeah, we got a lot of D1 athletes, all the school, all the regional records in New York State.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I'll say, find a mentor, find the extra help. If you have a high school coach who's helping you, great. But also don't be scared to communicate with that coach and say, hey, do you mind if I get extra help from somewhere else? Since I just want to learn as much as I can.
Right.
Don't be afraid to do that. At the end of the day, you have to look out for yourself. I think it's obvious now that there's opportunities and scholarships out there for you. So stick with it, have patience. And if you ever have any questions, reach out to me, and I'm pretty sure you'll say reach out to you.
Yeah.
One last thing I'll say, it's back to doing whatever it takes. There's an athlete that I've been working with for the last 6 months from Cleveland who I've never met, and she found the Forza Athletics website. Right. Who's established in New York. Mm-hmm. And she on her own found it, and she reached out to you, connected with me, and she's been, obviously we're not training now, but she trained with me, and within 2 months she improved her weight PR by 10 feet. Right. Now I'm not saying that story because it was because of me. It was because she had the mentality to do whatever it took, whether if it was her driving an hour from Cleveland to come see me or her taking the extra time to get better. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and do more than what most people are willing to do. I'll say that's the main thing.
All right. Well, I can't top that. It's been an hour and 15 minutes, and I'll let you. I don't know.
That flew by.
Well, it did fly by. I know.
We got to do another one or more, 5 more at least.
We didn't talk about sophomore year. I got so many shenanigan stories for you, and I think. Oh my gosh, people don't even know.
We got to talk about tomatoes at some point.
The tomatoes, oh my gosh, tomatoes, the teardrop mussel.
Yep.
The biggest party Grinnell ever saw.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. Well, Lewis, thank you for your time, and we'll wrap it up for this episode, and we'll get back on the other side.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks, man.
No problem.